Hey everyone, welcome back. Apologize, it's been a little bit longer than normal for me to get the series of videos together. I've got about 4 or 5 here in the next batch, and I've been feeling a little under the weather, so, and then with the holidays it just kind of delayed things. Anyway, so catching up, I'm just working on getting some of the wires terminated here with the instrument panel and some of the hoses that goes along with it. You can see I've got the rear lights wired up. They're just kind of dangling down there in the rear of the fuselage. I found that the wire for the heater controller was a bit short, so I had to get the wire stretcher out and start working on that. I tried to preserve the connectors that came with the actual the cables there, and just got them pried off there, and then got the correct gauge cable and soldered some extensions onto it, so they're plenty long at this point in time. It was great because I was able to repurpose the connectors and just put it all back together at the end of the day. It took I don't know, maybe an hour or so to get that part done. It's been a while since I've done a lot of soldering, and you wind up needing to do quite a bit of that to get some of these wires all terminated. I also forgot that I had a third hand for doing the soldering and pulled that out, started using that. With all the work that's going on in there's definitely a lot of extra metal shavings that sort of get floated around, and it just kind of bugs me to have those in there because I don't want them staying in there and basically making contact in some weird way. Getting the panel connected for the first time, I just really was anxious to do this. I probably was a little bit early to do it. But I'm just at a point where it's like I really kind of want to see something fun, like does this turn on? So I pulled it out and got a little bit of wired up, but it was just going to be too much of a hassle to really mess with at this point in time. So I put the panel back on the bench there. Finally got some screws to get the rear lights put in. So hopped back in the plane and got that taken care of. Oh, also the date at the bottom. Please ignore that. One of the cameras that I was using actually wound up the battery drained all the way out, and I did not realize that when I plugged it in the next time that it reset the clock as well as resetting the preferences on the clock to the original date. You'll see that in and out for the next period of time. One thing that I found out, I'm just kind of cruising along through this process, and one good thing is I looked at the back of the G5 and realized that it needed a couple of extra, or a static and a pitot connection going into that. So I'll wire those off here in a second. But I did get the terminators in for the main Garmin piece there. One of the things that I am doing here is, so that's the heater cable that needed to be run through. I had it installed initially, and the pin that held it in place popped off, so I figured I'd take the time to get that cable off, trim it down, and get it put back into place securely. I think I may have mentioned it in another video, but I am doing just some manual controls for the valves on the left and right heater, or the Y valve that comes with the plane. There's quite a bit of instructions in the kit for like an electronic version of it, but I'm fine with just the manual version of it. I think it'll work great because they're both operate independently too. Here's the Y valve adapter. I just basically clipped it off the hose that I had and put a connector on, or the Y valve connector on each of the static and the pitot tube, and just relabeled those because the G5 has its own inputs on the back of that, and it's just pretty simple. You heat up the end of the cable or the hose there, makes it enough or flexible enough that it'll slide right over that Y valve without really much of a problem. I did label the hoses or tubes. If you're watching this and you're well before this part where you're getting ready to actually start working on it, I really like the colored tubes or hoses that they use for the different types of connectors. And the hose was just too long, so I'm just trimming it off here at this point in time. I had already done a lot of the plumbing on this, and then found out that there was some additional colors that I could get, and that would have been really nice to do. But at this point in time, I'm just too far along in the process to go back through and pull everything out, and I've got the material on site, so I'm just proceeding along with what I have. I'm just making sure that I have the hoses labeled, so when I get ready to terminate things with the wing, then it's just a matter of reading the label that's on it. The other part that I also realized was I really needed to run at this stage of the game the pitot, angle of attack, and static port. Well, the static port's actually in the back of the plane on this build, but the angle of attack and the pitot tube, I needed to run independent versions of those and have those prepped for when the wing goes on. Because otherwise, once the wing goes on, it would be very hard to get that whole hose kind of woven through the airplane and put together. So, this is a point in time where I'm starting to work on the cover. If you've watched Evan's videos at all, he does mention that this goes on and off a number of times, and I mean, he's not kidding. It's not quite at the same level as, say, when I was doing the nose wheel itself, because that was together and apart several times. This isn't too bad. The one thing that also, you have to find center on that cowling, and it's a curved piece. It's not exactly something that's easy to take like a tape measure and put it up to it. So my solution was basically get a string and tape it to one side, run it to the other side, determine where the end piece was at, and then take the string off, fold the string in half, and that gives me my center point. It just because half of the whole string was exactly the center point on that piece. So that I wound up using that method a couple of different times, and it makes sense. So if you're needing a tip for just making it easy to find that center part, this is where I was just getting this what is it, like a tow bar, or not a tow rope. Just strapping it on there to hold it in place once I get it centered, so that I can start lining up the holes and do the pilot holes all the way around. The one thing that's really interesting about this part is it's like you need to kind of have it tight, which makes it difficult to get the guide part in there. So you got to have it a little bit loose so you can get it in there. And then this part here, it was very interesting. This is the right side of the airplane. It's about a ½ inch shorter than the left-hand side. So this is set exactly correct, and you'll see here it's 30 inches, 30 and 3/4 inches. I know this is most everything is in the metric system, but I don't have a metric ruler. And then this is the left-hand side, so it's perfect with no trimming whatsoever on the left-hand side. And if I were to force that right-hand side so that it was flush, it would wind up twisting that nose piece there. So I called my buddy Aaron and talked to him a little bit about it, and he indicated that his section here was also short on the right-hand side, and he just did some body fill that kind of fill it back in. So that's what I'm going to wind up having to do with this case. It's kind of interesting because it's almost like they trimmed it off at the factory too short. I can't imagine the mold itself would be too short, because then all of their kits would be that way, and I would hope that that feedback would get back to the building center and they'd fix it. But anyway, so once I got the center couple of clecos in, at that point in time, I felt a little more comfortable with raising it up and using the guide there. The first several times you put these in, they're really tight, and I mean, I'm fine with that. I'd really prefer to have it extra tight as it's going around, and then kind of work it into place. I had a couple pieces of where the skin and the frame that goes around the firewall were just separated enough that the rivet had not pulled them together adequately, and so I basically used the clamp there to pull together. All of the pink and yellow notes on each of the clecos there is the distance in millimeters when the that extra piece that the cowling fits onto and is in distance wise. So I knew where I needed to trim a little bit to make it perfectly even. And I did have to do a little bit of trimming on the right hand side to get it perfectly square or flush. And this again didn't have anything to do with the right hand side. It was just that it needed a little bit of fine tuning in that area. Anyway, so that's it for this episode. By the time I get this out, it'll be a couple weeks from Oshkosh. I plan on being there. I'll definitely be at the Sling Ding thing. So look for me there, and hopefully we'll see everyone soon. Thanks.